Welcome to What Resonates. This podcast is about tuning into energy, intuition, and what feels true for you. Each conversation invites you to notice what sparks curiosity and feels aligned, opening a wider field of possibility for yourself and for humanity. Keep tuning in and follow what resonates. Are you a Reiki practitioner wanting to build your very own Reiki business and grow your income? My Reiki Business Success course gives you the practical tools and heart-centered strategies in a step-by-step structure that is my signature Root to Bloom method. And you'll use that to build a thriving Reiki business with integrity. It's self-paced, it's real-life friendly, and you receive lifetime access so you can revisit the content at any point. Ready to take the leap? Visit mainstreamreiki.com and enroll today. Welcome to the very first episode of Season 6. I'm Andrea Kennedy, and our show has changed. We have a new name, What Resonates. Every episode is an invitation for you to tune into yourself, your intuition, and discern what feels in resonance and what doesn't, so you can discover deeper truths about yourself and illuminate your path forward. I am honored to begin this new chapter with a very special guest, Eileen McKusick. Eileen is the creator of Biofield Tuning, a pioneering sound therapy method that uses tuning forks to release stuck energy and restore balance. With decades of experience, she has helped thousands of people worldwide move beyond pain, anxiety, and emotional challenges to live more empowered lives. Eileen is also a teacher, researcher, and author whose work continues to reshape how we understand the body's energy field and its role in our healing. Eileen, I'm so thrilled to have you back to the show. It's been quite a while.
Yeah, great to see you, Andrea.
Yeah, I am so excited to get into this topic with you because I think it is really opening up to so many more people. It's like people across all kinds of backgrounds and beliefs. I see them more and more interested in who they are and this energy concept. It seems like people are more curious and open to it. And I know you've been at this a really long time. So I'm sure you've seen a huge shift, and maybe you can talk about that. But one of the areas that invited me to go deeper and deeper into this was your work with the aura. I'd always been kind of, I don't know, mystified by the aura many years ago. It was hard for me to learn anything about it or even feel confident about what it really was. So I'm wondering if we could start there. What have you learned through all of your decades of research? And I will say a lot of your background is in that first episode we did, so we'll link it in the show notes. But your work has grown so organically by experimentation and your curiosity, which I absolutely love and respect that. But could we start with the aura then and what you've learned?
Well, it's actually so simple that our body has electric current running through it. And most people get that at this point, that your heartbeat is electrical. It's why a pacemaker works, because it regulates the electric pulse of your heartbeat. Your brain waves are electric. Your blood carries a charge. Really, there's electricity running through your whole body all the time. And it's really the difference between being alive and not being alive, and your light being on. Anything that has electric current running through it has a magnetic field around it. And our human body is no different. So your aura is simply your magnetic field. It's really that easy. It's not this strange mystical thing. It's based in science we all learned in grade school and understand. And what I discovered is that I'm going a little deeper than that, and discovered that the magnetic field actually has a very specific anatomy and physiology. And that's really been the essence of my work, sort of like a LiDAR operator in your biofield, revealing what is hidden by sound, bouncing sound off the body, off the field, and listening to the ping back and observing this whole anatomy hidden in plain view. And that my experience of working within the biofield has produced rather astonishing clinical outcomes of physical, mental, emotional, really leading to the awareness that our body's electrical system is really primary and that everything that happens on the physiological level is downstream of what's going on in our electrical system.
That is really fascinating. I remember early on, I learned in a book that the aura had layers to it, and those layers corresponded to the 7 main energy centers. And so for a long time, that's kind of the framework that I sort of thought of with the aura and how it related to the body a little bit. But it's so much more than that, your own research. Can you kind of walk us through how does the aura relate to the body and the energy centers or whatever it is that you think it's important so we can redefine who we really think we are, physically and energetically?
Well, your biofield is just another part of your anatomy. It's just a part of your anatomy you didn't learn about. And I think because most of us weren't exposed to it in any kind of formal scientific education, and we've been really conditioned to believe what we're told, that is sort of like, what do you mean that's been hidden? Why haven't I learned about this? The fact of the matter is that your electrical body was known and understood. You're fascinated with body electricity in the 1800s. Even in the early 1900s, you could buy devices for your electric health from the Sears and Roebuck catalog. So this is not new. It has simply been hidden because we have all been put down the path of looking at the body chemically and mechanically. So if something goes out of whack in a chemical mechanical world, then you treat it with drugs and surgery. And that has been, in a way, kind of like taking over the marketplace. And that was very systematically done by Rockefeller medicine. This is a very intentional obscuration of vibrational medicine, of resonance medicine, and not only an obscuration, but a demonization, a kind of programming where people have been taught to dismiss these notions as pseudoscientific or nonsensical. It's understandable why it's mystifying because we don't really have any kind of technical understanding of it. Like you, I also had seen and read the sort of Vedic esoteric perceptions of it, this idea of the subtle bodies, the 7 layers or koshas. But when I started investigating the biofield, the atmosphere around the body with my own sonar, radar, LIDAR technology of sound, I recently said on a podcast that if I wasn't a biofield tuning practitioner, I think I would be a LIDAR operator because I love revealing what is hidden and seeing the unseeable. And my work with the tuning forks has really granted me that. It's been a wonderful process of exploration without expectation and pattern recognition and just exposure. Next year will be 30 years that I've been playing, experimenting with tuning forks. They've been so fascinating to me, and they never get boring. They're endlessly fascinating. And what my tuning forks revealed, so for those of you who are watching, you can see that I'm holding a model of a torus. So a torus is a sphere, with a central channel down the middle and a circulation of the outer boundary into the center core and back out to the outer boundary. And this is really what I've observed our fields to be. I was very surprised to discover this outer membrane. So our field is a bubble. And in the koshas, we always just see it sort of fading out, right? It just sort of fades away. So I wasn't expecting to find a boundary. And in plasma physics, this is called a double layer plasma membrane. It's an area of greater electrical charge that creates this boundary. It's sort of like how we imagine that the ionosphere does in our atmosphere. And so in this model, the biofield is what I would call our mind. It's our sense of self, the sense of I. It's where all our memories are stored. And this is really what I found as I poked around in this territory was memories and memories laid out in a very specific way. Memories that were generated recently close to the body, memories from early in our life or gestation being in that outer boundary, and then birth just inside of that. And then all the years in between falling in between. And that traumatic memories produced areas where there was greater charge, resistance, distortion, the story of that trauma. And so the tuning forks are diagnostic in that they help me to find areas in the field where the signal is out of phase, incoherent, jammed up. They're simultaneously therapeutic because the tuning fork provides a biofeedback loop to the body. It will initially resonate with the distortion that's present, but then because it is producing a strong, coherent input, it's like a metronome, it helps to entrain the body to relax and bring itself into a more deep breath, freedom kind of place. I've really come to see actually that pretty much any ailment that you can suffer from is tension based. And I know there's a lot of people have a lot of theories about, oh, it's parasites, it's toxins, it's this and that. But what I've really observed through this work is that every micro and macro trauma that we've experienced in our whole life sets in some kind of pattern of tension into the body. And so this is really a systematic approach to finding where these knots and snarls and difficult places, and we had some kind of trauma response, a contraction, a defense, and just helping to gently release that so that the body can go back into a state of flow. And so that's what a biofield tuning session is. It's combing through your biofield, combing through your memory banks, finding places where you had difficult inputs and helping the body to digest those, to integrate those, to harmonize those. In these areas of these difficult memories, there is literal electromagnetic energy stuck there. When we talk about being stuck or frozen, trauma is literally frozen in your biofield. And so what we do is we comb through the field and we bring that stuck energy back into the midline and back into this circulation, which increases the overall energy that you have available to you. We all know that when we've had a lot of difficult things happen to us, we're not fulfilling our potential, right? And I think that's so many people who get on the healing path know that there's so much more to them than they are able to have the experience of. And that part of you that you're missing is still around you, it's still there. And we can actually restore it back into flow, back into coherence, and back into harmony, which then opens up your potential and you start to be able to finish projects or start projects. You start to be able to bust clutter. You start to have a longer fuse, all the things that you would expect that you would have with higher, clearer, stronger energy.
And so that's really quite amazing to think that a lot of the energy we need to accomplish what we want is actually around us and not being utilized. That's really what you're saying, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's like living in a big house and you only have access to a few rooms and you know that there's more to the picture, but you can't figure out how to access it. And this really, yes, it is about healing trauma, but I think at the end of the day, it's more about accessing more of you and your potential that you know you have as a human being, your gifts that you want to be able to receive and share, even your patience or your sense of humor. When we've had too many difficult inputs, we lose our patience, we lose our sense of humor, we lose our compassion for ourselves and others. And so the states that we want to get to are there, but we kind of need to be rewired in order to have that experience of ourselves.
And you're saying that the shift and the healing really just comes by addressing those areas that aren't ordered, maybe energy that's not balanced or ordered, and bringing that back in to the main energy.
Yeah. When before I started training my first students in 2010, I was a chronic overgiver and overdoer. And I suffered from chronic mid back pain, sort of running on adrenaline, feeling like I was holding everything up and didn't have support myself. So very classic kind of mid back issues. And so I taught my sons who are 6 and 9 how to do tuning. And they were like, Mom, this is really subtle. And I said, yes, it is subtle, but learn to understand subtleties and women will love you. But then I asked my 6 year old, I was like, can you describe what we're doing in this work? And he said, it's taking energy from where it doesn't belong and putting it where it does belong so it can get to work doing what it's supposed to do. And I think still, like, that's the most brilliant description ever because it really speaks to what is happening. Energy is stuck somewhere it shouldn't be, and then we put it where it belongs, and then it gets to work doing what it's supposed to do, right? Energy is a capacity to do work. And if we don't have the energy to do what we feel we need to do, then it's because that energy is stuck somewhere it's not supposed to be. And it's beautiful. It's so elegant and easy to just sort of comb it back into place.
I know I am kind of struck with how easy it is. I mean, it sounds really easy, doesn't it? I mean, but here we are. This is just so leading edge, I think, right now, and so exciting because it is simple and you're teaching it to other people. And so you have a map of the biofield that you've developed. And can you describe that a little bit more in detail? So if I understand from what you've said prior, the edge is about our earliest part of this lifetime. And then as we move through there, we're coming more towards present time.
Hmm.
But is there more to it though about like where? Because that feels pretty big.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so this was all discovered over the course of 4 or 5 years, where I spent 15 years using tuning forks just right over the body, over close to the body, because why would I do anything other than that? But then I started discovering tonal changes, areas of resistance, information in the atmosphere around the body. And so when I started exploring that, it took time. It was really sort of like this blind fumble in the dark with momentary flashes of illumination where I would see a pattern or I would get insight into that particular sound in that particular area and what that meant. And also just the observation with many clients that people who came in with physical issues all had the same underlying mental and emotional issues in very specific body parts. So, everyone who came in with right hip issues, I discovered that they had a tendency to overthink, overdo, overplan, wake up with to do lists running in their minds, and that was taking them out of the present moment into the future, into doing. And creating an imbalance in the electromagnetic field around the area of the right hip. And so that was sort of like this observation that that particular frame of mind of being future obsessed, being doing obsessed seemed to reside off the right hip. And that really every body part seemed to record the record of whenever we engaged in a particular frame of mind. The left shoulder, everyone who came in with left shoulder pain had undigested, unexpressed sadness, maybe a tendency towards depression. And so I started to see the field as striated, almost like file drawers, and that every emotion, every quote state of mind that we might have created a particular frequency signature that was specific to that emotion or that mindset. And that those got recorded in the biofield in very specific areas. And came to see that, if you are 60, let's say, everybody's field is about the same size. It extends about 6 feet away from the body on the front, back, and sides, maybe a couple feet above the head and below the feet. And that I would find information if you were 60 that was generated when you were 30, about 3 feet away. So it works just like hair, right? What was recently grown is close to you, what's further away was produced later. So it really follows that model. And a 10-year-old and an 80-year-old have the same size field, but an 80-year-old, it's like the hard drive is filled up with information, right? So maybe the why memory retrieval gets a little harder as we get older because there's a lot more data to sift through. So I also discovered other features. There's features that I call the ancestral rivers that really feel like little rivers that flow down either side of our body, about 10 inches on either side of our body. The left side contains the information of your mother's bloodline. The right side contains the information of your father's bloodline, and that is your birth your birth parents that are there, the bloodlines. And that when we stick a fork in those rivers, we can hear the story of the ancestry. Like if there was a lot of alcoholism, generation after generation, that river will sound turgid, it will sound troubled, it will all of those stories are in there. I've really come to see DNA not as fixed chemistry, but rather as flowing music. And it's music that we can absolutely change, even in an instant of being very present and witnessing and feeling and honoring and helping to harmonize these songs of our ancestors. And it can change us in us right now. So the way that it works is the ancestors are above the head and the offspring are below the feet, and you're right in the middle. And these are sort of like string theory, vibrating strings that resonate across time that really go back to the origin of life itself, right? Because we're downstream of all of that evolution and many generations of the human story. There's also mother and father spots. They're almost like orbs that sit on either side of our solar plexus. And again, about 10 inches off, they reside in the ancestral river. Your mother's on your left. Your mother's energy informs your spleen, your pancreas. Your father's energy informs your liver and your gallbladder. So when people end up with health issues in these organs, are almost always traceable back to difficulties with those parents. And I can stick a fork in those little orbs and tell you all about the personality of your mom, the personality of your dad. There's a whole vibrational language of the body that the tuning forks you can hear in the overtones and undertones. It's like almost like a invisible ink decoder that allows us to actually hear the body. And it's all recently I worked on someone and I was I'm able even just over Zoom to just listen in and within just a few strikes really discern what's going on in the body very clearly. And the woman that I was working with was just blown away. She said, I just can't believe how incredibly accurate you are. Like, are you psychic? And I was like, no, this is science. This is a pattern. This is a language. This is repeatable, just incredibly fluent in it because I've just had so much experience in it. And when I first started hearing things, it took a while to understand and recognize patterns and correlate what I was hearing to what was going on in the mind and the body.
It's just absolutely incredible, Eileen. I'm wondering, a part of me is still back when you were talking about the hip with the person who would wake up with a to-do list. So that's an interesting and I think very relatable situation for people. I guess my question is, what's the process here? Because if the person has the pain and they have that tendency to have that state of mind and that pattern of behavior, and then they come and they have a session, and then in the field, that energy gets taken care of and brought back in and resolved. Do they then not wake up with the to-do list? I mean, how does that go up?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, a lot of what I do with people is help them to train their minds because I don't want you to depend on me. I don't want you to be irresponsible with your mind and then come back and want me to fix you. I want you to learn how to use your mind to check and adjust yourself to be now that right hip flares up when you're burning the candle at both ends, when you're overdoing, when you're grinding, when you're going into that, you're tilting to port. You've got to learn how to steer your own boat so that it stays on keel. And I think it's very helpful when someone can reflect back to you the reason why your hip hurts. How the fork sounds over here. It doesn't sound right or good. This is where you're piling up energy off your right hip. It's starting in your mind. You are doing this to yourself by spending more time in the future, more time in this busy work than you are in the present moment. We are human beings, not human doings. And culturally, we're all tilted to port. We're all kind of geared towards this guilt driven, approval seeking, survival driven at this point in humanity. Many people have no choice but to work in that way that leads to this kind of imbalanced pattern. So a big part of working with me is or biofield tuning in general, as we have thousands of students and practitioners around the world now, is self-awareness and self-reflection and guidance in how to use that awareness to check yourself and to do what your job is, which is to take care of your body, keep yourself in balance, keep yourself healthy. And it's a lot easier to do if you understand what the underlying pattern is that's giving rise to it. And you can catch yourself. You're like, oh, my hip's starting burning. And what am I doing? I'm like, to-do listing, right? And then it's an invitation to put your energy back yourself. And that's a really big part of what we do is in these biofield adjustments, right? And it's sort of like chiropractic for your field, what we do. Like I can put you back in order, but life is going to take you out. You don't just go get one chiropractic appointment and expect to stay in balance for your whole life, right? We're always encountering stressors and this and that, and the world has become extremely stressful, extremely stressful. So, more than ever, I think it's important that we have practices. If an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, it's worth investing in the practices that help keep you on keel, keep you in order. You go get your oil change regularly for your car. You don't expect that your car is just going to run and run and run without a tune up here and there. And it's the same with our bodies. So I think that tuning is a really beautiful way to invest in your own prevention and keeping yourself on keel in order, tightening the screws, after you've been through a rough time. Certainly, the way that I use it is preventively, prophylactically to keep myself. And the more that you start to understand your energy body, your biofield, the subtle ripples of current through you and what those mean, the better you're able to respond to those messages and put yourself in order. So I can always tell when it's time for a tune-up or time for a chiropractic adjustment, time for a massage. I'm a really big fan of keeping things in order rather than letting everything go to hell and then try to clean up the mess.
Oh, that's a great way to be, that's for sure, but I love the different examples that you gave because you're so right. You don't take one supplement and you're good for life, you know? And I also really love the element about people learning about themselves and what their tendencies are, because I think that awareness is so transformational. I mean, in and of itself. So when you add up all of these things, there's just so much potential, I think, for people to move forward. It seems like trauma is talked about a lot. And you mentioned tension as well. And I guess my question for this is there must be, I don't want to be negative, but some people must have no end of trauma in their fields. So, I mean, if they show up for a session, how do you know what trauma you're needing to focus on, or because there's so much there? So, maybe how does a session go?
Yeah, some people have been dealt really difficult hands. And this work, when you comb a fork through someone's field and you get into these memories, you can feel them. I've had many occasions where I look at the person like, how did you even get in here and get onto my table with everything? How do you appear to be a normal human being when you went through this at like the hands of your own family? It's really astonishing what some people have been through. So when you come in for a session, you lie down fully clothed on the table. We activate some points on the body. I use a weighted fork on the body, get the fluids moving, but I can also use it like a stethoscope. So maybe some people have had Chinese medicine where you have your pulses read, right? And if somebody's very good at it, I remember the first time I had an old Chinese man read my pulses, and he figured out that I had my appendix out when I was 16. I'm like, oh, how are you doing that? How are you just putting your fingers on my wrist and getting all of that information? But that vibrational record of our life history is absolutely encoded in our electrical system because every single thing you experience is an electrical impulse in the body. So it makes sense that your memory is in your electrical system. So I listen with the weighted forks. I feel the story that is like a stethoscope. So that starts to give me information, right side of the body versus left side of the body, upper part of the body versus lower part. How are things moving? But I also I use a pendulum actually, just a little plastic ball and a string. And I just go through the body and I ask it, where does it want me to work today? I've found that often where the pain is isn't where the problem is. Like someone might have pain in their right hip, but that's because the left hip is jammed up. The traditional approaches like physical therapy don't always look at the whole picture, right? And so the pendulum is just another way of revealing what is hidden, allowing the body to communicate what it wants to do, and it might say the left knee. And so then I will go out to the outer boundary of your field, about 6 feet away, and I will start combing in very slowly along your timeline. So it's sort of like dropping a needle on an album and reading, hearing the vibrational record of your life, the highs, the lows, the alarms, the depressions. It's all there in this beautiful vibrational language. And I will stop in areas. So there are areas where it feels like you're actually encountering mass, where even people who've never picked up the forks before in their first pass through the field can have this experience of getting stuck. It's so weird, right? And you might think that it's subtle, but it's not. It is it is surprisingly obvious. The changes in the overtones and the undertones can be surprisingly obvious. Like, oh, that's a car accident, and the tone of alarm is like, ah, the fork goes really sharp. Right? So it's not like, oh, I might be imagining this. It's not that. It's much more clear than that. And so, in these areas where the signal goes incoherent, where there's a feeling of resistance, we just stop there and we just reflect the sound back to the body. You know how you haven't seen a mirror in a while, you get to one and your hair is a mess and you have a poppy seed in your teeth, right? And so when we have reflections of ourselves out of order, we use that reflection to put ourselves in order. And our body's organizing intelligence is no different. It hears, senses, feels itself out of order, and it's being given that reflection, and it's being given a steady tone like a metronome. The tuning fork is just producing a steady tone, a steady rhythm. And so the body uses that information to balance itself against. We're designed to be in harmony, we're designed to be in order, and the body will use anything it can to help to always be rebuilding, reordering. And so pure sound is this incredibly simple vehicle for the body's electrical system to reorient itself around. And so after just a little while of being in that spot, and it can be anywhere from a minute, I've stayed in certain areas for 20 minutes or more, especially if it's something very early under the age of 3, complex trauma that a whole lifetime has been built on top of. It might take a while of staying there. So this is one of the ways people often ask me, like, is what you do with tuning forks different than like a sound bath? And if you go to a sound bath and you lie down, those waves wash through your water. It'll help you to feel relaxed. But these complex knots and tangles in your electrical system won't let go. And so this practice of staying with the body until it really unties itself, until it really sorts itself out is a big part of what makes this work so effective. And then once the body's finished what it's doing, that resistance will drop away. It feels like the energy that was stuck there has now decoupled, and then we just keep moving along the timeline until we hit the next spot and the next spot. And what I've always been amazed by, even from the beginning, is that the body determines the order of the traumas that you encounter, right? Because if you've had many traumas, you kind of can't address 60 years worth of traumas in one session. So it's going to bring up to the surface, because the biofield contains huge amounts of information. It's going to bring up to the surface whatever it knows needs to be addressed first. I remember working with a woman and we did maybe 10 sessions. And it wasn't until maybe the fifth one, sixth one, that her birth trauma came up. So it had been present in the field, but it wasn't presenting itself to me. Her body wanted to work on her trauma with her husband, her trauma with her mother, her trauma with her daughter. And then finally I came in one day and I got into the birth trauma right off the bat. And I was like, I can't believe I never encountered this before, but there it is today. And so our
Hmm.
human bodies are so brilliant. I'm just struck again and again and again by the brilliance of our hardware and the limitations of the software we've all been downloaded with. So I will just move through the body. Then we come to the midline. So if you think about sort of sweeping along these photons or electrons, we don't really know what to call them, right? They might be phonons, tiny particles of sound, of light, of electricity, energy, right? We'll just call it energy. And you take that energy that had been frozen and then we drop it back into the midline of the torus, where it then goes back into circulation. And so that's an adjustment. And oftentimes an adjustment, we'll just maybe spend that whole hour working really deeply on that area, and we might go work on another area or two. And what people mostly say after sessions is that they feel lighter. And it's kind of funny because my husband said to me, he's like, "Can't you come up with something more scientific than that?" And I said, "Well, I mean, that's really what everyone reports, but there's a kind of heaviness in energy that is stuck or frozen. And that is the emotional baggage that we talk about, these things that are, and very often where these tangles are will intersect other people's tangles and we will kerfluffle and very likely to attract a mate that just kind of dovetails perfectly both of your issues. And the more that we shed this emotional baggage by digesting it, by integrating it, the less likely we are to kerfluffle with other people's tangles. And so the drama in our life also drops. It's a huge energy drain that many people find themselves in, especially in family situations, that is stressful and ultimately goes nowhere. It's the sort of problems that go round and round in circles, these family traumas and dramas and non beneficial patterns that just get passed along the generations. But I do see so many people in our generation, Andrea, and even in younger people who have come into my office. And for many years, I was in an office in a tiny town in the mountains of Vermont, really in the middle of nowhere, poor, rural, conservative, no sign on the door. And people would come in and they'd say to me, "I'm here to heal my family lineage. I'm here to clean up the mess." And I'm like, "Hey, we come to the right place because that's what we do here." So I think so much of this work too is about just healing the human family in general.
That's beautiful. Really beautiful. I'm wanting to ask about the session a little bit more. When you are combing through the field, is the client are they feeling anything? What comes up for them? What's the back and forth there?
hmm Well, everybody's different. And so you just never know. I worked on two people in the last few days, and one of them didn't really feel much, maybe a little tingling, didn't get really emotional. But the next one, as soon as I got into this particular sticky memory, just started crying. It can, tears just come up. So people can cry, they can have a flood of memories come up, they can feel energy moving in their body, which can feel a little weird. They might get referral pain. They might feel nauseous. It can be uncomfortable, but you got to feel it to heal it. And that's a big part of it, especially getting into these very difficult memories where you get someone to witness you. As tuners, we're not therapists. We're not there to coach you, on like tell you how to solve your problems. We're just there to witness and validate whatever your experience has been and to be with you in that moment where you might be feeling it, to heal it, to just provide comfort and seeing, like, I see you, hear you, I understand what you've been through. Because the forks tell the story in this really pure way, like in a way that you could never really tell with words. There's just a kind of resonant knowing, and just like how know your own feelings when you're having them, when you are a biofield tuning practitioner and you are in some kind of story, like, it really opens you up to such a deep level of empathy and compassion and caring to be able to be with people and just witness them and be with them in whatever that difficult story was. And I think that's maybe one of the biggest parts of this work is the validation of being seen, being heard, of being understood with no judgment, no need to fix, just to be with you in that place. And once that happens, the sort of combination of all the things um, allows that energy to release and to let go. Oh, yeah. I've had many people come in with terrible hip pain or low back pain, and I'm combing through the field and I get to something when they were 7 or 10. It's really stuck. And I'll say, okay, this is around 7, 10, and this is guilt or shame. Does that make you think of anything? Now, people don't have to talk about stuff. They can think about it. Sometimes you go through a whole session without even looking at the timeline, just having them be somatically aware. But very often when I hit those spots where the fork really doesn't want to move despite me staying there, there's often a story. And what I will often hear is, I've never told anyone this before, but dot, dot, dot. And then they'll be crying and upset, and then we'll get through it, and then they'll get off the table and the hip pain is gone. Most pain
Wow.
is truly emotional.
Wow. The person who didn't feel much, does that mean that the healing is less? Does it just mean that they healed anyway, but they didn't need to know, have the knowledge of that? I guess my question is, does knowing or sensing of the client determine the potential of the session?
Well, everybody's so different, right? And every session is so different. For people who spend a lot of time in their heads and don't have a lot of somatic awareness, they're going to have less experience of that. With repetition and exposure, they will start to feel. Really, the only promise I make is that you're going to relax a bit. That's it, right? But if everything is tension based, then every little bit of relaxation you do is going to help you to feel better, lighter, freer, more in flow. There's a lot in this work around breathing and patterns of breathing, because all of these different patterns of tension restrict our breathing in some way. And so much of what we experience inside is absolutely tied to our breathing rhythm. When someone has anxiety, they have no control over how they are using their breath. There's also an education about awareness around breath and deepening of breath, liberating of breath. We breathe easy when things have been lifted off us or from us. And in the electric health model, your breath is your primary source of life, because we can go for months without food. I know some breatharians go for months without food. Some people claim to go years without food. So it's not food that we're getting most of our life force from. Days without liquids. You can only go a few minutes without breath. So that is where your primary life force comes from. And it's not just our body that's electrical, it's our atmosphere as well. Our atmosphere is a plasma, it is electric charge. When you breathe in, your blood gets bright red. Why? Because it has light in it, it has charge in it. Oxygen has free electrons, and it's the charge, not the oxygen, the charge is being carried by the oxygen that is delivered to your cells. So you are going to have more energy if you breathe more freely. And for people who've had a lot of trauma, there's breath holds, there's shallow breaths, there's inconsistent breathing patterns, there's nervous system responses that hijack the diaphragmatic rhythm. So that the more we learn to have our breath be full, free, grateful, easy, controlled, able to go deep, maybe when we're having a moment, regulate yourself with your breath. That's going to improve your electric health all around. So, different people will experience that liberation of breath and that greater somatic awareness by different degrees, depending on who they are, what they're ready for. But pretty much without exception, anybody who does a series of sessions learns to feel it more, learns to become more somatically aware. And health, as I said earlier, really lies in our ability to be tuned into the subtle signals that are going on and respond to those, so that we don't have to take the 2x4 at some point, because we've been sort of willfully and maybe even survivally disconnected from how we feel and being in our bodies. So and how you experience it today, Andrea, might be different than how you experience it next week because of the phases of the moon or the time of day. There's lots of different things that inform the degree which were affected by a session at any particular time.
It's just so multifaceted. I mean, we're so exquisite, aren't we?
We're so exquisite. We're so amazing. If I've come out of this with anything, it is just a complete love of humans and the human body and the human mind and the human spirit. And we've been really corrupted and adulterated and damaged. We're all like magnificent Stradivariuses that have been terribly mishandled. We are so intrinsically beautiful, brilliant, and gifted. Everyone is. That's the ground state of our beings. Everything else is just noise in the signal.
Oh, beautifully said. Yeah, noise in the signal. We have a lot of that out there,
A
that's for
lot.
sure. I'm wondering now, you had said you do this over Zoom, and a lot of our listeners and our audience on YouTube is familiar with energy healing and how it works over distance. But when you started biofield tuning, you didn't think it would work over distance. Is that right?
I mean, I adamantly didn't think it would work. People asked me for years if I could do it at a distance. So I thought that was the most ridiculous thing I'd ever heard. And I didn't hold back my sentiments about the absurdity of the idea. But then, actually, one day I was working with a colleague, fellow who was an MD in the office in California. He had helped me with my master's thesis. Gentleman by the name of Carl Merritt, He wrote the preface to Tuning the Human Biofield, and he asked me if I wanted to try it at a distance. But I'm very much at heart a scientist, and I love experiments. One of my favorite things to say is like, "Let's try this and see what happens." And so I was definitely down for the experiment, but completely not attached to it. Right? I was attached to my own arrogant dismissal of it, and so he lay down on his treatment table in his office in California, and I approached the empty treatment table in my office of Vermont, and we had no open line of communication. So we weren't on Zoom, we weren't on the phone, we were just connecting by intention. And Andrea, much to my amazement, the same pattern of information that shows up when there's actually a body there showed up, and I was able to read it through his field, and I read what was going on in his body, what was going on in his timeline. I made notes about everything that I encountered and did adjustments, and then called him. And I went through my notes, and he said, "Eileen, that is all exactly correct. And I experienced a state change. I feel lighter. And I also took my resting blood sugar before and after and had a beneficial change. So, yep, looks like we can do this at a distance." I'm like, "Oh God, no, I got to eat crow." I was wrong. I can. But then I was like, "Okay, well, will it work all the way to Australia?" And so my friend Brendan Murphy was living in Australia at the time, and I reached out to him. Same thing again, no open line of communication. Same thing. Could read, could adjust, completely right. So that's pretty wild, isn't it? Like, how does that work? How is that even possible? I have theories, about how it works, but ultimately, at the end of the day, if you think about the biofield model, and if can find your memories in the air around you. They're your memories and they're in the air around you. Where do you end? You don't.
Right.
Right? I mean, we're all part of the one field, the vibrating light of field that becomes solid, right? It gets wound into light, but I'm still woven into the fabric of the one. I'm still informed by and informing the one. And so I can tune into your field just like I can find a web page on the internet. 'Cause
Mm.
it's independent, right? Like a web page is independent, and yet it's connected to the World Wide Web. So I can go in and I can find a website from the World Wide Web. I can find your biofield signature from the one field of information because you're part of the whole system. Yeah. It's a
I
little
l
mind blowing. I mean, we've been really taught that we stop at the skin. And that we're chemical and mechanical. And this idea that we're electromagnetic and we don't stop at the skin and that we're woven into the entire tapestry of life itself, and that we are part of the one is a whole different way of looking at self and life.
it certainly is in consciousness, and my goodness, to think about that whole topic is just so fun, I think, to ponder all of those questions. And you're still researching, is that correct?
Well, I feel like every time I pick up my forks, I learn or I observe something new. And everyone is so different and so fascinating, really. I just worked with somebody earlier today, and there's a particular sound in the field when somebody has gotten whiplash. And
Mm.
it's like a wom 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 sound. Like heard it right away in the forks. I'm like, do you have an accident or injury where you had pretty significant whiplash? Yes, 2023, significant whiplash, healed most of the symptoms, but they're kind of back up at the moment, which is why I'm here, right? And so there's that language which is so endlessly fascinating, and that process of learning that language. And I often am coming across sounds like I never heard before. I'm like, well, what is this? So every session is really a tiny adventure. We don't know where we're going to go. We don't know what's going to happen, what's going to be revealed, what the outcome will be. Um, it's always new. It's really different than like doing a massage, like, yes, bodies are different, but there's sort of a limitation there. Whereas biofield tuning is always new, always fresh. Every person is so different. And every time you see them, they are showing you a different energy signature. And as an explorer and who loves adventure, it's super satisfying to me to be constantly exposed. I just sit down in front of my laptop and hold out a tuning fork and tune into your signal and listen and feel, and then watch as your body uses that input of sound, coherent sound, and attention, and what it does with it and how it resolves itself, and just the incredible brilliance of our anatomy and physiology and spirit. It's fascinating, it's gratifying, it's always revealing something new. So really every day, every time I'm with them, there's something new to be learned. But we're also doing formal research. I have a nonprofit that we get grants to do studies that we submit to peer review. We're in the process of collating and writing up a big study we just did last year with 100 volunteers. 65 people received 5 biofield tuning sessions over Zoom, and we had 35 people in a control group. And so we're looking at the data of that right now. And that's always interesting. You just never know what research will reveal. We've got a long list of other studies we'd like to do. The next one I'd like to do is with EEGs, and have the giver and the receiver each have EEG nets on, both locally and at a distance. So we can see what happens in the brain waves of the giver and receiver when they're in person, what happens with the brain waves of the giver and the receiver when they're on Zoom. Is there a difference, right? So this is a great way to see what's happening in the brain during a biofield tuning session, and to compare and contrast local versus non-local and see the difference, right? So that's so intriguing to me. I'm like, what's the data going to show? So there's an element of the formal research that, on the one hand, yes, we're doing the science, right? Because this field is considered a battleground, which I think is really absurd. Right? Like why would you argue that if the biofield exists or not? We know that anything that has electric current running through it has a magnetic field around it. They invented a device back in the 40s called a squid magnetometer that's been able to detect the magnetic field of the heart up to 12 feet away. That's 80 years we've known that there is a magnetic field. It is willfully obscured. So anything that we can do to explain the science of it, demonstrate the efficacy of it, just helps to move all this along. And the reason why I do this is because it's a very elegant, non invasive, efficient way of helping bring people relief from what ails them.
And your curiosity is, I think, infectious because to hear you talk about it, it just makes me want to explore it even more. And I know we've barely scratched the surface, and you've got 2 books out already that are just packed with information and what you've discovered all these years, and a true pioneer, I have to say, in sound healing, Eileen. I wonder too if we can, before we go, invite everyone to explore your website. You've got a lot there. You even have some free sessions, right? That they can actually try out. They're just audios. Is that correct?
Yeah. So I had a busy practice, and my practice actually became so busy that I couldn't manage it anymore. I was killing myself in the process of trying to take care of others. And one of my friends suggested that I start working with groups, and group distance biofield tuning, like, sounds ridiculous to me. Like, it's nothing that I would ever do. Like, who would do that? So in the beginning, I did a number of free ones and sent out surveys to everyone. I'm like, did you notice anything? Did you feel anything? Was that helpful? And it was such a positive response from people. So I started doing live broadcasts, like weekly sessions that people would come and be live on. But then encountering tech issues and noises in the background, finally just started making recordings that people could just listen to. Discovered you didn't have to be there, any more than you have to be there when a song is recorded for a song to move you. But people are like, well, how does that work on recording? I'm like, did you have to be in the studio when that song that can bring you to tears was recorded? No. And so, in a way, they're kind of like songs. They're weird songs with banging tuning forks and me giving commentary, but it still has that same kind of effect. Music moves us, sound moves us, and these recordings can really move us. It can really rewire our signal. And my sessions are very educational. It's really sort of education, coaching, supported by sound. Sometimes people complain that I talk too much, but if you just want bowls, go listen to bowls. You know what I mean? Like, I'm an educator and a coach, and that's my primary what I'm doing in the field, and I'm supporting that with sound adjustments. So I only ever made one where I didn't talk, and it's a 30-minute one for sleep. And I had to break it up into 10-minute segments and eat a bowl of cereal in the middle because it was so boring for me. I was like, there's no way I could just sit here and bang on forks for 30 minutes and not give commentary. But there is one, if somebody just wants me to shut up and you just want to listen to forks, the one for sleep will work. So, yes. And actually, I have a YouTube channel where I have a series called Sonic Sundays. There's actually 29 free sessions on YouTube where I explore difficult and delicate topics as diplomatically as possible and also do a tuning to support them. So that can keep you busy for a good long time, plus the free ones on the store. And then if you want to go even deeper, there's dozens and dozens and dozens of other recordings. But we also have practitioners all over the world, so you can go to the website and find a practitioner. We also have a biofield tuning clinic that we have people who've really been deeply trained by me. That's also available. And I have 10 instructors who have lots of experience. And for people who are really discerning and like, well, if I can't see Eileen, I want the next best. So you can find my page of instructors and maybe work with one of them. So there's lots of different ways to do this. You can even get some of your own tuning forks and start playing with them yourself. You can become a practitioner if you like as well.
So many different options, and to have the free experiences are that's so generous and I think educational. And it's funny, I was kind of chuckling to myself how we were talking about people like think you talk too much or whatever. I get the same thing, with my videos. And you know what? Everybody has a choice, right? But you have to be you and how you approach, your work. So I just think it's phenomenal. And I would just invite everybody to check that out. We'll put all the links to in the show notes for everyone. And hopefully, our listeners and viewers have found something that resonates with them in today's discussion. Thank you so much, Eileen, for being here. I so appreciate it.
Andrea, thanks for having me.
Thank you for tuning in. Keep trusting your truth, keep listening to your inner wisdom, and keep following what resonates. To sign up for the newsletter, leave a review, or connect, visit whatresonatspodcast.com. You'll also find everything linked in the show notes.